Once I sat in the car, my sister started screaming. Oh my God. I looked at it in the eye. I said, calm down. You're seeing things. I looked over at the kitchen window and I started screaming as well. This is part 2 of Never Clean a House Alone. Part 1 will be linked in the description below. Here we go. After the entity had jumped into my sister-in-law, she started screaming and banging her hands against the laundry door. Then she ran in the house while the others were still praying in tongues. My partner ran after his little sister to help her. I screamed out to the others during their praying to go and help. My sister and I were terrified. We both took the kids and ran to the front of the house. I seriously thought she was playing around at first. Then I realized it was real because you can't fake strength, right? My partner, his 2 oldest sisters, and their husbands, plus the lady from the church, all couldn't hold her down. She was too strong for only being 15 years old. What freaked me out more was she was speaking in another language, one I've never heard before. It was like a made-up language that sounded kind of like Hebrew. I don't know what it was. It didn't sound like her voice, that's for sure. It scared the hell out of me. They ring the pastor right away. He shows up acting casually, like it was nothing for him. Meanwhile, my poor partner was stressing out for his little sister. She was on the wooden floor with her hands stuck in the air, like she was chained up or something. She then lifted her head high off the ground on the wooden floorboards and started slamming her head back and forth while screaming. The pastor started performing an exorcism. At the same time, the lady from the church started screaming with her eyes closed. She was praying and pointing to the neighbor's house on the right. She started yelling out, "Devil, devil, devil." I always knew something was wrong with the neighbor's house. It turns out it was their parents who owned the house that my sister-in-law was renting. They looked to be about 65 to 70 years old. When the whole possession was happening, they both just stood by their window, watching and smoking a cigarette. They were watching the whole thing without blinking. They freaked the hell out of me. After the pastor finished the exorcism, my sister-in-law finally came to her senses. She didn't remember much and had bruises all over her body. The creepy couple next door walked away. The neighbor on the other side of the house asked us if everything is okay. She went on to explain that she always sees a tall black figure by a tree. It is always just standing there at the back when she is having a cigarette. The tree she is talking about happens to be about half of the lawn and half on what used to be an old river bank. There is no fence at the back of her house. This tree happens to be a whole other story, where young school kids happen to commit suicide by hanging themselves. Sad to hear actually, but the whole area is dark and mysterious. The whole town knew about this house, but not once thought to tell the neighbors. After the possession, the pastor started another cleansing on the house. During the cleanse, they heard a hissing sound coming from the middle room. They turned around and saw a big black snake coming out of the room. The snake went straight out the back and disappeared. The pastor told my in-laws that they needed to pray every day and to not give up. Unfortunately, it was too much for them to handle. They ended up going away for a holiday. While they were gone, my father-in-law was staying at the house to finish off the cleaning and lawn maintenance. He had to finish cleaning before they could move out. He ended up making his bed in the forbidden storage room. I tried asking the demon to show itself, but it wouldn't. He just heard it grunting angrily and hiding. While sleeping at night, a little girl kept showing herself to him, pointing to the backyard. He decided to start digging in the backyard to find out what she was pointing at. He found a car seat, a tire that had the year 1960 engraved on it. They also found an old knitted doll with an extra foot sewed on it. He was so devoted to try and solve the whole mystery of the little girl showing herself to him at night. He didn't realize staying there was consuming him. I get a phone call from my mother-in-law one night. She asked me to please go over and pick up my father-in-law. She said he was upset and getting all worked up over something. I had already been through what was the worst experience of my life. I felt curious and in denial about it. I went to see my sister-in-law who was pregnant. I dragged my sister along too because I was terrified. We get to the house on a beautiful sunny day. It seemed weird how that house was still cold on sunny days. As soon as my sister and I stepped foot on the driveway, we both smelled something horrible. It was a putrid, rotting kind of smell that crept right up our nose. When we arrived, we saw the police was there as well. My father-in-law thought that what he had dug up would be enough evidence for the police to search the property. They didn't want anything to do with the situation. They looked freaked out and refused to listen to him. He walked to the back, and my father-in-law was explaining the story to the two police officers. They were looking around terrified, like they had seen a ghost. What I couldn't understand is why the others couldn't smell the rotting smell. My sister and I were the only ones that could smell it. The police told my father-in-law they couldn't help him. I noticed they parked a little far away from the house like they knew something we didn't know. When they got to their cars, they drove off quickly. As soon as they left, my sister and I started to freak out. The smell was getting stronger and stronger. We walked back to the car. While I was walking, something made me stop and look back at the kitchen window. For some reason, I got the feeling that something was watching me. I told myself that I'm just crazy and continued walking towards the car. Once I sat in the car, my sister started screaming, "Oh my God." I looked it in the eye. I said, "Calm down. You're just seeing things." I looked over at the kitchen window and I started screaming as well. It was a tall black figure kneeling down. His face was glowing with a light reddish color. It almost looked like a mask. The black-shaped eyes were watching my sister and me. My sister-in-law started praying in tongues. We screamed and we started hearing things get thrown around from inside the house. There was no one inside the house that we could see. My father-in-law was still out back by the forbidden storage room. The smell started to make us sick. I don't wish that smell upon anyone. I never want to see or smell that again. I think the shadow must have sensed our fear. My father-in-law, he wouldn't listen to us. We were yelling at him to get in the car. We decided to leave and went to pick up my partner up from work. We took him back to the house to get his dad. As soon as his dad jumped in my car, my stomach dropped and felt heavy for some reason. I then asked him what the hell is in the car. What did he have that was making me feel like this? He took the knitted doll out of his pocket. He was taking the doll to my house to give to my kids. I told him to put it back where he got it from or get out of the car. Eventually they ended up getting an old Aboriginal man to cleanse the house out. He told my in-laws that everything in the house has to stay there. They decided to move out and never spoke about it again. I will never forget what happened at that old house. It has opened my mind. It has made me realize that things we can only imagine are truly out there.